just want everyone to just take a couple seconds, look around the room, see all the wonderful female faces we have here, and realize that we've got directors, we have chief executives, we have partners, principals, we have head of departments. 50 years ago, this would have been unheard of. And that's incredible. But that being said, there's still a lot of work to be done. A recent studies found that last year, only 26% of chief executives were women. That's globally, 26%. That was a record. In 2020, it was 20%. In 2019, 11%. Just take that in for a second. So, my first question is a loaded one. It's going to be for you, Joanne. Thinking of these numbers, how do we get them up?
Let's just park the fact that there's still a case to be made about why having women represented at all levels within your organisation is good for your business. It's 50% of the population. If you don't have women around the table, you're missing out on a whole market, a demographic of business. So, and I think for a long time we've made that argument and that case. So let's just take that as a given, that our fight isn't to explain why it's important. Our fight now is to make it a reality. And I think that starts from working with young women, such as the talent we've got around the table here now, to genuinely start to support people into seeing how they can access opportunity, how they can grow, how they can develop.
Most professional industries, I think, see a lot of women not returning from having children or career breaks, and I think we've got to look really hard at why that's the case.
I think men should be forced to take parental leave. I think they should have to be forced to take the 6 weeks that women need to take. And I think, I mean, that's a different thing that comes from above, and that's sort of policy that needs to be driven on a national level. But I think until there's a full level playing field for men and women when it comes to the risk of someone going off for parental leave, until it's completely equal, I think it's always going to be an issue.
I think there's something about mentoring as well, and it doesn't have to be formal mentoring or coaching, but I think every one of us have had people in our lives who've really inspired us or informally mentored us, and I think every one of us around this room should pledge to do that and give people a hand up behind us, and to make that sort of pledge today would be really good, because I think that's really important.
It's not enough just to be a woman in a senior leadership role. You've got to be a woman in a senior leadership role who's prepared to talk about her own experiences, whether they've been good or bad, because that's what's inspiring people. It's not our job title that inspires people, it's how we behave, it's how we connect with people that really makes a difference.
You've almost got to see it to believe it when you're coming up through the ranks. To believe that you can get there. If you take like the women's rugby team for England, or the women's football team, 20 years ago their squad wouldn't be playing on the telly. They were on prime TV on Saturday. So everything is progressing. It's just not perhaps progressing as fast as we'd like.
Sometimes I think people in senior leadership roles make it look impossible by sending emails at the wrong time of night or appearing to do everything, when actually none of us are. We just have spent a long time constructing a career that works for us, but we perhaps don't always communicate how we've done that.
I think the problem is you're trying to create confidence. You're trying to say to young women in the future, look, this is possible, you can do it and you can go for it. It's because I'm doing stuff and I'm saying yes to things, and I'm making myself a bit frightened sometimes by putting myself out there, taking the risk.
I think being allowed to fail as well, and being in a place where you feel safe to take a risk and be able to fail, and whether it's another woman or a man that's going to support you to get back up and get back on your feet is really important.
One thing I've noticed through my career and working with teams and young people coming up is that young women put a lot of pressure on themselves because of the way society labels their behaviour. So if you haven't got attention to detail, you're scatty. So young women, the graduates that I work with, would pay such close attention to detail, where the lads were a little bit more laissez-faire about it. And what it meant is when they became chartered surveyors, the girls were given the jobs that required attention to detail, the valuation or property management, whereas the lads were given more exciting development and investment and agency roles, because you could get sued on the other stuff. So the women were straight away being put into those roles.
I was reflecting on when I took the job of Chief Exec of Manchester, I was following a huge character. And everybody I met, their opening sentence was, oh, you've got big shoes to fill. Oh, you've got big shoes to fill. In that early stage of starting a new job, I think having men who wanted you to succeed, as well as outstanding women, also really made a difference. So we mustn't ignore that part of our job is also, I think, to lead men to be champions and supporters of and understanding of women as well.
But I think people have got incredibly generous spirit, and if you ask people for their support and their help and their advice, people will give it, won't they, largely? But then there's a barrier that prevents us from doing it because we think we've got to know everything and own the work. But I think just asking people to support you is really important.
I think sometimes it's onus on us to make it clear that we've not done what we've done without support. So I helped a colleague yesterday who was struggling to get resource. I sorted out the resource for her. I started a conversation for her. She was very grateful. To me, she doesn't need to be grateful because any number of people have done that for me in the past. And sometimes, particularly at a more junior level, you can't sort everything out yourself. You do have to rely on other people and know you've got other people you can rely on.
I think we've been on a real journey around recruitment and how you recruit in a more diverse and open way. And I think actually that's really interesting in terms of looking in different pools for recruitment and actually trying to then utilise that diversity of thought and bringing it into the boardroom.
My peers, often it's women who don't apply for stuff because they feel they're like 80% ready for the job but not 100, whereas male peers are like, I'll give it a go, and then they often end up getting those opportunities. So I think there's something there for me as well, where you just give something a go, and if you feel you've got the skills, the experience will then follow behind.
Now I've got this job and it's scary and it's terrifying, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's really hard and awful, but they've done, say, 2 years in a difficult place they wouldn't have tried before, and it's been great for them. So there's something about saying, just, take a shot.
So I do a lot of work around women in tech, and one of the conversations we have there is around that realistic sharing of what it will be like for that person once they get into a role of leadership. So the programs are all kind of glossy and it's amazing and you'll be like a leader, but then when you get into the role, again, using myself as a young black woman as an experience, it's quite lonely because there isn't other people that perhaps have that same experience as you. So I think there's something there around the consistency of processes and those kind of opportunities to get people into leadership, but then also when they're in leadership, that sustained support, because in reality it's not kind of easy.
I think that ability to kind of be self-aware and self-reflective is really important in a leader, to know your own values, to know what's important to you, and to know your strengths and weaknesses, and where you can develop. And I think, it's a sweeping generalisation, but I tend to find women tend to be more self-aware, and tend to be more willing to kind of work on themselves and be a bit more vulnerable about their weaknesses, as well as being able to talk about their strengths.
I think building on that point as well, being confident in your skills and your weaknesses and owning them. And I've been in a few instances where I've thought, I need to change that, and I need to change to fit in, and I need to change it to do this and do the other. And actually, I've probably in the last couple of years become a lot more aware and confident of where my skill set lies and actually where I can add value, and then being confident in thinking, I'll take that path because I know that's the right path for me.
Two things picking up to that. One is you tapped on it on excitement. Enjoy it. I did something about if you're running something or you're senior and you're not having any fun, get out, because it shouldn't all be that hard.
So I guess on that note, what are some things that you wish someone had told you when you started your career going forward?
You know what you're doing.
I was just thinking how powerful it would be if all those years ago we could have all looked in the crystal ball and seen ourselves now, and how empowering that would be for us. Because at that, you just at the start of your career, I just don't think that you ever necessarily believe you're going to get in the room. And then most times when I've gotten in the room, I've looked around and I've thought, how underwhelming is this? You are responsible for you and how much you give and why you give it, and I think you've got to back yourself.
Well, as someone who's sort of growing in her space of leadership, I think for me it's around owning your brand, and that I am Sherelle, not necessarily the organisation I work for. So that network that I create in MCC and externally is really important to me and my career as an individual.
Oh, I'm completely delighted that everybody told me to do the opposite of what I did. So, because it was all men who would have told me that I couldn't do, shouldn't do, wouldn't work. So I'm quite pleased that I only ever listened to myself. So actually I think the words are to know yourself and be yourself.